When we think about humanity's long story, stretching across tens of thousands of years, we often picture tools, fire, or the shaping of stone. But before there were cities, before there were words, and before we understood the sky or the seas, there was something else, something more subtle and yet ever-present. There was vibration. Imagine yourself in a world before civilization. No engines, no electricity, no music created by instruments as we know them. Only nature, vast and unbroken. The wind sliding across the grasslands, the steady rhythm of waves pulling back and forth against the shore. The deep rumble of distant thunder rolling across a valley. Each of these sounds is more than just background noise. They are vibrations, waves moving through air and through body, patterns of energy that could be felt as much as heard. Early humans lived inside this ocean of vibration. To them, the world was not silent, it was alive, breathing with pulses and tones. The first vibrations they ever knew were perhaps the most intimate of all. The steady beat of their mother's heart carried to them through the warmth of the womb. That primal rhythm may have shaped their earliest sense of comfort, safety, and connection. Even today, many people believe that this is why drums, with their low, steady beats, can calm us so deeply. They remind us of that first secure rhythm, a vibration tied to the origins of life itself. Vibration was not something abstract for our ancestors, it was survival. Right. The crack of a twig in the forest could signal danger. The rustle of grasses could mean prey or predator. The low growl of an animal in the dark carried a vibration that was in tea, just heard with the ears but felt in the bones. Humans learned to tune themselves to these signals, sharpening their awareness of sound and movement. Evolution favored those who could interpret vibration quickly, who could sense the hidden presence of danger or opportunity in the world around them. But survival alone doesn't explain why vibration became such a central part of being human. Beyond alertness, there was something else, something emotional, even spiritual. Early humans must have noticed that certain sounds stirred feelings in them. The whistle of wind through a canyon could feel haunting. The crash of waves could feel powerful, overwhelming. And when they began to experiment with their own voices long before spoken language was structured, they would have discovered that they could create vibrations themselves. A hum, a chant, a cry. These were not just sounds, but feelings turned into waves of energy. Picture a small group of early humans huddled near a fire. One begins to hum, perhaps absent-mindedly, a low continuous note. Another joins, matching it. Soon a third adds a slightly different pitch, and suddenly the air is filled with harmony. There is no concept of music theory, no thought of scales or notes, just voices vibrating together in a way that feels unified. That moment might have been the beginning of something larger, the discovery that shared vibration could bind people together, soothe fears, and create a sense of belonging. We often think of humanity's great inventions as things we can hold in our hands: stone, tools, wheels, or weapons. But one of the earliest and most profound inventions was not material at all. It was the use of vibration to shape emotion and meaning. Sound became more than survival. It became a language of connection long before spoken words took shape. Even today, certain frequencies seem to touch us on a level deeper than thought. A low rumble can trigger unease. A high chime can spark a sense of clarity or peace. Modern science tells us that different frequencies of vibration can influence our brain waves, our nervous system, even our hormones. But long before any study confirmed this, humans were already experiencing it. Imagine being one of those early humans watching lightning fracture the night sky. The thunder that follows doesn't just echo, it shakes the chest, rattles the bones, and reminds you of your smallness beneath the vast heavens. That vibration isn't just sound, it's experience. And in that experience, seeds of belief and wonder begin to grow. Perhaps this is where the roots of spirituality first took hold, an awe of the invisible forces that shape us, forces that can only be felt through vibration. The first vibrations were, in a sense, teachers. They taught humans to listen, to anticipate, to feel. They were reminders that the world was not static, but alive with movement. And they suggested something profound, that humans themselves were part of this great web of vibration. Every breath, every heartbeat, every footstep on the earth was its own pulse, adding to the symphony of existence. In time, this awareness began to shape culture. Rituals may have started with simple rhythms, clapping hands, striking stones together, stamping feet on the earth. The act of creating vibration became sacred because it wasn't only about sound. It was about altering the state of the body and mind. Steady rhythm could slow the breath, ease the heart, and bring a sense of calm. Faster rhythms could awaken energy, stir courage, prepare for the hunt or for battle. Vibration was a kind of medicine long before medicine had a name. When we speak today about frequencies like 999 Hertz, it's about chakras and healing, we are echoing this ancient understanding that vibration is not just external, but deeply internal, capable of changing how we feel, how we think, even how we perceive reality. Our ancestors may not have spoken of hertz or resonance, but they knew the power of vibration in their bones. Think of how universal it became, across the world, from Africa to Asia, from the Americas to the frozen north. Humans discovered the drum. Each culture, independently, realized that rhythm and vibration could move people together as one. The drum beat was heartbeat. It was life. And when voices rose in song above that beat, it was as if humanity itself was learning to ride the waves of vibration into a higher state of being. The first vibrations, then, were more than just the beginning of sound. They were the beginning of awareness of self, of others, of the larger forces shaping the world. They were a thread weaving humanity together, long before language, long before civilization. When we listen to certain frequencies, whether it is a chant, a note held on a flute, or the resonance of tones like 999 Hertz, we are remembering something older than memory. We are recalling that we are creatures of vibration. Our bodies, our emotions, our very consciousness are shaped not only by what we see or touch, but by what we feel in waves of energy moving through the air, the earth, and within ourselves. So as we begin this journey, let us pause and honor those first vibrations, the heartbeat in the womb, the wind in the trees, the thunder across the sky, the voices lifted in early harmony. They remind us that vibration is not simply something we hear, it is something we are, and by listening to it, by attuning ourselves to it, we rediscover the deep and timeless connection that binds us to the earth, to one another, and to the mystery of existence itself. If the first vibrations came from nature itself, the wind, the water, the thunder, then the next great step in humanity's relationship with vibration came with something we created: fire. Fire was more than light, more than warmth. It was rhythm, crackling, popping, hissing, as the wood shifted and the flames breathed. For early humans, fire was a teacher, a guardian, and a companion. They sat around it at night, not only for safety, but for story. The flames danced and the embers glowed, and alongside the light came a sound that was alive, the living percussion of burning wood. Imagine a small group of our ancestors gathered in the dark. The fire burns at the center, and with it, a strange magic occurs. Around its edges, shadows flicker and stretch, while at its heart there is a pulse. A crack here, a spark there, a steady hum of warmth. It is as if fire itself is singing. Perhaps it was in these moments that humans began to imitate fire with their own rhythms. A stick struck against a hollow log. Stones clicked together in time with the sparks. Hands slapped against the body in simple, steady patterns. It is not hard to imagine the birth of the drum as an echo of fire, the first instrument made to capture the same vitality, the same unending pulse. And when the drum arrived, it changed everything. The drum is often called humanity's oldest instrument, and for good reason. Across every culture and continent, some form of percussion appears at the dawn of society. A stretched hide over a hollow shell, beaten with hands or sticks, created something extraordinary, a controllable heartbeat. Unlike the random crackle of fire, the drum beat could be repeated, shaped, shared. It was not just background, it was intention. In the glow of firelight, early humans would have felt this truth. A drum beat carried farther than words, farther than the eye could see. It echoed through the earth, through the chest, through the bones. One person could set a rhythm, and others could follow. Soon, a group could move as one. The fire gave light, but the drum gave unity. Why did this matter so much? Because survival was not only about strength, it was about cohesion. A group that felt bonded could hunt together, defend itself together, grieve together, celebrate together. Rhythm was glue. It was invisible, yet it held people close. Scientists today speak of something called entrainment, the way living beings sync to rhythms around them. Our heartbeat can align with the drumbeat. Our breathing can fall into its pattern. When people share rhythm, their bodies begin to mirror each other. Their movements fall into step, and their sense of I becomes we. Early humans may not have had the word entrainment, but they experienced it fully. Around fire and drum, they learned what it meant to be one body, one tribe. This is why so many rituals, whether of joy or sorrow, used rhythm. Birth might be celebrated with steady beats that welcomed new life. A hunt could be prepared for with fast driving rhythms that stirred courage and adrenaline. A death might be mourned with slow, heavy beats that echoed the ache of the heart. The drum was not just sound, it was emotion translated into vibration. But the drum did something even deeper. It became a doorway. When rhythm is repeated long enough, when the beats continue without pause, something happens in the human mind. Conscious thought softens. The body begins to sway. Time itself seems to stretch. Many cultures discovered this. The drum could lead to trance. In trance, people felt they could leave their ordinary selves, step into other worlds, or hear the voices of ancestors. The fire gave humans control of light. The drum gave them control of vibration. Together, they created one of the earliest spiritual technologies. Consider the San people of southern Africa, who use rhythmic clapping, stamping, and drumming in their healing dances. These rituals, some of the oldest in human history, are not simply performances. They are acts of transformation. The rhythm builds until the dancers enter a trance state, where they believe they can access spiritual power to heal illness or restore harmony in the community. Or think of indigenous peoples in North America, where the drum is often said to represent the heartbeat of the earth itself. To play the drum is not just to make music, it is to align oneself with creation, to feel in tune with the land and all living beings. From Siberian shamans to Amazonian healers, from the temples of Mesopotamia to the villages of Polynesia, the drum has carried humans into altered states for millennia, and always the fire is near.
Nice.
It is here that we see how vibration became more than survival or communication. It became sacred. But sacredness does not mean distant. It means close. So close that it shapes every breath. A mother patting a child to sleep is using rhythm. A group chanting together is using rhythm. Even the simple act of walking in step with another person creates a kind of drumbeat, a shared pattern. These small acts were, and still are, echoes of those ancient fireside gatherings. We might ask, why does the drum affect us so deeply? Science offers part of the answer. Low, repetitive beats can influence our brainwaves, shifting them into states of relaxation or heightened awareness. The body, especially the chest and stomach, resonates with lower frequencies, making us feel the sound internally. This is not just hearing it, it's full body listening. But there is also mystery here. No amount of scientific explanation can capture the feeling of a drumbeat that seems to pull the soul out of the body, that makes time vanish, that leaves only pulse and breath. Perhaps this mystery is why the drum has always been tied to spirit. As humanity evolved, the drum traveled with us. In temples, it marked the rhythm of prayer. In battle, it stirred armies to march in unison. In celebration, it shook the ground with joy. And always, it reminded us of our beginnings, fire, heartbeat, unity. The fire and the drum represent something essential. Our desire to shape the world not only with our hands, but with our senses, our emotions, our spirits. Fire transformed the dark. Drum transformed the silence. Together, they transformed humanity itself. And even now, in our modern world of screens and machines, we still feel the call of fire and drum. We gather around glowing lights, though now they are digital, and we move to beats that pulse through speakers instead of stretched hides. Yet the effect is the same. We are reminded of who we are. Creatures of rhythm, seekers of connection, being shaped by vibration. So let us remember this, that each time we hear a drumbeat, whether in ritual, in music, or in the quiet tapping of our own hands, we are touching something ancient, We are sitting once again by the fire, feeling the pulse of the earth, listening to the first language humanity ever spoke, the language of rhythm. The fire gave us warmth, the drum gave us heartbeat, and together they gave us a path, a way to transform vibration into meaning, into community, into spirit. Before flutes were carved, before strings were strung, before skins were stretched over hollow shells, there was one instrument every human carried from the moment of birth: the voice. The human voice is extraordinary not only because of its range, but because it is entirely woven into our being. We cannot separate it from ourselves. To sing, to hum, to cry out, tit is as natural as breathing. And in truth, it begins with breath. A current of life passing through the body, vibrating folds of muscle rising into sound. That sound can tremble with fear, soften with tenderness, harden with command, or bloom with joy. More than any drum or fire, the voice was the first instrument that could carry feeling. Consider the cries of an infant. They are primal musicra, piercing, urgent. The infant cannot yet speak, but the cries carry information: hunger, discomfort, longing. The parent responds not to the meaning of words, but to the tone, the rhythm, the intensity. From the very beginning, we are attuned to the music of each other. This sensitivity may explain why the human voice became such a powerful tool in our evolution. It was not only a way to signal or command, but a way to share inner worlds. A rising note could express wonder, descending sigh could express sorrow. A rhythmic chant could bind a group in unity. We often forget how unusual this is. No other animal has the same mastery over tone and pitch that humans do. Birds may sing, whales may call across the oceans, but the human voice carries a spectrum of sound and meaning unmatched in the animal kingdom. Somewhere in our deep past, our ancestors' vocal tracts shifted, our tongues grew flexible, and our throats opened pathways that allowed for a wide range of articulation. Evolution had given us a gift: the ability to turn breath into song. It is not difficult to imagine how this might have happened. Early humans gathered around fires might have begun to experiment with their voices. At first, it may have been mimicry, copying the call of a bird, the howl of a wolf, the rumble of thunder. But soon, something new emerged: sound for its own sake. A drawn-out hum, a rising chant, a playful rhythm of syllables repeated until they became more than words. In those moments, language and music were not separate. They were the same stream of sound, carrying both meaning and feeling. Even today, when we speak, we are singing more than we realize. Our voices rise and fall, soften and harden, stretch and contract. Every sentence is a melody. Every word is a rhythm. But when early humans leaned into sound, when they allowed themselves to vocalize beyond the functional, they discovered something powerful. The voice could heal, comfort, inspire. A hum could calm a restless child. A chant could prepare hunters for the dangers ahead. A song could ease grief after loss, like a lullaby. It is one of the most universal traditions across cultures, yet it is also one of the most ancient, long before there were instruments. There were lullabies, gentle hums, meant to soothe infants to sleep. The lullaby is more than music. It is medicine. Studies today show that lullabies lower stress levels in both children and parents, aligning heartbeats, calming breath, reducing anxiety. In those first quiet songs, humanity discovered the therapeutic power of voice. But the voice was not only for comfort, it was also for transcendence. Across the world, humans have used vocalization as a spiritual tool. Tibetan monks chant deep, resonant tones that seem to vibrate the very stones of their temples. Gregorian chants in medieval cathedrals lift voices into soaring harmonies meant to touch the heavens. In the deserts of North Africa, nomadic tribes chant rhythmically to steady their journeys and call upon the divine. Why is voice so tied to spirit? Perhaps because it comes from within. Unlike drums or flutes, the voice is not external, it is the body itself vibrating. When we sing, it feels as though the soul itself is speaking. The vibrations resonate in the chest, the throat, the skull, making us feel not only the sound outside us, but within us. In this way, the voice bridges the inner and outer worlds. And as with the drum, repetition and rhythm turn the voice into a doorway. A chant repeated long enough can alter consciousness, quiet the mind, in open states of awareness where visions and revelations may emerge. The simple act of humming can calm the nervous system, lower blood pressure, and bring a sense of unity to body and mind. Our ancestors may not have had scientific explanations, but they knew the experience well. Voice was medicine. Voice was magic. But there was another side to this story, the voice as a tool of unity. Imagine a group working together to build, to carry, to row, to hunt. Alone the task is heavy. Together, the burden is lighter, but only if everyone moves in rhythm. Here, the voice became a tool of coordination. Call, chant, shouted phrase kept the group in time. Hiv-ho. 1, 2, simple sounds, but powerful in keeping bodies aligned. From these work chants grew something larger, communal songs. A song sung not for survival alone, but for joy, for memory, for identity. Each group, each tribe, each people developed songs that marked who they were, where they had come from, what they cherished. To sing together was to declare, we belong to one another. This belonging extended across generations. Oral traditions carried history, myth, and law, not only through words, but through rhythm and melody. Stories sung were easier to remember than stories spoken. Music became a vessel of memory, a way for culture to outlive the individual. Through voice, humanity achieved immortality, not for the body, but for the story. Even now, in our modern lives, the echo of this truth remains. We sing at birthdays, at weddings, at funerals. We sing national anthems to declare collective identity. We chant at protests to demand justice. We sing in stadiums to celebrate victory. The voice, once a survival tool, remains the instrument that carries our most powerful emotions into the world. But perhaps the most extraordinary thing about the voice is its intimacy. Unlike the drum or flute, the voice reveals the self. A voice is unique, shaped by anatomy, by habit, by life. When we hear someone sing, we hear not only sound but story. A cracked voice can reveal grief. A trembling one can reveal love. A strong soaring note can reveal triumph. This intimacy is why voices move us so deeply, why a song can bring tears, why a simple hum can bring peace. The voice, then, is not just an instrument. It is the mirror of humanity itself. Fragile yet powerful, fleeting yet eternal, individual yet universal. In those early days, when our ancestors first experimented with sound, they may not have known that they were creating one of the most profound tools of connection ever to exist, but they felt it, and feeling was enough. The fire gave us light, the drum gave us rhythm, the voice gave us soul. And together, these three wove the first symphony of humanity, one that still plays. In every lullaby, every chant, every whispered song that rises into the night, if the voice was the first instrument, then the next step in humanity's great symphony was to reach beyond the body and draw sound from the world itself. It is a simple truth. Humans have always been restless experimenters. To see a hollow log and wonder what sound it might make when struck, to pick up a bone and blow across its end, curious about the whistle it produces, to stretch a string of sinew and pluck it just to hear the vibration. This curiosity, this desire to coax sound from matter was not just play, it was discovery. And so, the first instruments were born. No one knows exactly when it happened, but archaeologists have found clues scattered across the ancient earth. One of the oldest known instruments is a flute carved from the wing bone of a vulture. Discovered in a cave in Germany and dating back over 40,000 years, imagine it. Someone sat, carefully hollowing that bone, cutting precise holes, experimenting with placement until the right tones emerged. The first musician-engineer, carving not for survival, but for beauty. The sound of that flute, faint and trembling in the cave's dark air, may have been the first true music beyond voice and drum. To create sound with intention, to sculpt breath into melody, this was a leap of imagination. But the flute was not alone. Across the world, other instruments were emerging, shaped by local landscapes and materials. In Africa, hollow gourds became resonant shells for rattles. In Asia, bamboo became the body of flutes and pipes. In Mesopotamia, strings of gut were stretched across wooden frames, creating the first lyres. In the Americas, conch shells were turned into horns, their blasts echoing like the voices of gods. Everywhere, humans discovered that the world itself could sing. What is striking is how universal this impulse was. No matter where humans live, tundra, jungle, desert, they found ways to draw music from their surroundings. This suggests something profound. Music was not an accident of culture, but a necessity of being human. The need to make instruments to shape sound beyond the body was as natural as the need to paint on cave walls or tell stories by firelight. Why? Perhaps because instruments expanded what the voice alone could not do. A flute could hold a note longer, higher, purer. A drum could thunder louder than hands on a chest. A string could create patterns too quick and intricate for the throat. Instruments gave humanity new ranges, new colors, new ways to express what lived inside them. And as instruments evolved, so too did their purposes. Some were tools of ritual. Steady drone of a didgeridoo, played by Aboriginal Australians for tens of thousands of years, was believed to connect the player with ancestral spirits. The conch horn, blown across Pacific Islands, was used to summon gatherings, to announce sacred ceremonies, to call across oceans of silence. These instruments were not mere entertainment. They were bridges between worlds, between human and divine, between living and spirit. Others were tools of society. A drum beat could signal war or celebration. A horn could mark the changing of the day. A rattle could accompany dance, aligning the body's movements with the earth's rhythms. Instruments gave structure to time, to ritual, to life itself. And then there were instruments of pure joy. Imagine the first plucked string vibrating in someone's hands, the delight at its shimmering echo. Imagine the laughter when a child discovered that blowing into a reed made a sharp squeal. These simple pleasures curiosity turned to sound were just as important as ritual or survival. For in joy, humanity found resilience. In play, humanity found meaning. It is worth pausing to imagine what those early performances were like. Not grand concerts, but small gatherings. A few people in a circle, one humming, another beating a rhythm, another blowing into a bone flute. The music would not have been polished, but it would have been alive in the way a heartbeat is alive. Imperfect but steady, carrying life through every moment. Over time, instruments grew more complex, strings multiplied, stretched across wooden bodies that amplified their sound. Flutes became pipes, then panpipes, then whole families of wind instruments. Drums grew in size and shape, each producing different tones. By the time of the first cities, instruments had already become part of organized music. Harps stood in Mesopotamian temples. Lutes echoed in Egyptian courts. Trumpets sounded in Chinese processions. But even as music became more structured, the heart of it remained the same: to connect. Instruments were not simply objects, they were companions in humanity's journey. Extensions of voice and body, tools for reaching one another in ways words alone could not. And here lies another mystery. Why is it that sound created by instruments affects us so deeply? A flute's melody can make us weep. A drum's rhythm can make us dance without thought. String's vibration can pierce the heart. Science tells us it is because of resonance, because certain frequencies align with the body, the brain, the nervous system. Perhaps it is because instruments remind us of something ancient, the discovery that the world itself could sing back to us. For in truth, the birth of instruments was not only about sound, it was about relationship. Humanity was no longer only surviving in the world, it was in dialogue with it. Bone, wood, stone, shell, these were not inert materials, but partners, each holding a voice, waiting to be awakened. To play an instrument was to enter into that partnership, to coax the hidden songs of the earth into the air. And in doing so, humans found themselves reflected. The hollow of a bone became a flute, just as the hollow of a throat became a voice. The stretched skin of a drum echoed the stretched skin of the human chest. The twang of a string mirrored the tension and release of muscle and sinew. Instruments were, in a sense, mirrors of our own bodies, externalized so that we could hear ourselves more clearly. This is why perhaps instruments became so tied to identity. People's music is shaped by the instruments they create, and those instruments are shaped by the land they inhabit. The Kora of West Africa sings with the voice of gourds and cowhide. The shamisen of Japan echoes the timbre of silk strings and wooden bodies. The Andean panpipes carry the whisper of high mountain winds. Each instrument is a portrait of place, of people, of relationship between human and earth. The birth of instruments, then, was more than a technological innovation. It was a revelation that the world could be not only lived in, but played. That matter could carry meaning, that humanity could, through creativity, turn the raw materials of life into vessels of beauty. And so, across millennia, instruments multiplied. They became more refined, more diverse, more specialized. But whether a bone flute in a cave or a grand harp in a temple, their essence remained the same. They were bridges. Bridges between humans and nature, between humans and each other, between humans and the mysteries that lay beyond. When we listen today to the simple tones of an ancient flute, or the steady rhythm of a drum carved millennia ago, we are not just hearing sound, we are hearing continuity. We are hearing the same impulse that stirred our ancestors, to take what the world gives us and make it sing. And perhaps that is what it means to be human. Not just to survive, not just to endure, but to create, to turn bone into flute, string into lyre, shell into horn, and to fill the silent spaces of the world with music that says, we are here, we have been here, and we will continue to sing. If the first instruments gave sound to the world, then the next great step was to give music memory. For what is memory, if not a kind of song written inside us, patterns of feeling and rhythm, woven into the mind like threads on a loom? Long before words were written, long before alphabets shaped human thought, there was music. And music, in its strange and tangible way, became one of humanity's first forms of record keeping. It became memory you could hear. Think of the ancient storyteller seated by the fire. Round them, listeners gather. Children wide-eyed, elders nodding, hunters still smelling of the forest. The story begins not with words, but with rhythm, a drum beat, a chant, the repetition of a phrase carried on melody. In this way, the story takes root not just in the ear, but in the body. Music was the technology that allowed memory to stretch across generations. Even today, we remember through rhythm. Ask someone to recall a childhood rhyme, and they can recite it perfectly decades later. The melody acts like a net, holding the words in place. Without it, the story might slip away. With it, the story endures. This is why ancient cultures used music as a vessel for history. In West Africa, griots, the guardians of memory, sang genealogies, tracing family lines back centuries. In Polynesia, navigators memorized the stars and seas through chants, carrying maps not on parchment, but in melody. In the Vedic traditions of India, sacred hymns were sung for thousands of years before they were ever written down. Their precision preserved through the binding power of music, it is almost miraculous. Without books, without ink, humanity found a way to store and transmit immense knowledge through sound. Music was the first archive, the first library, the first recorder of who we were and what we had learned. But music was more than memory. It was also story. For music does what words alone cannot. It gives feeling to fact. A list of names spoken plainly is soon forgotten. But sung with rhythm, carried on a tune, it becomes alive. It becomes story. And story is what the human mind is built to hold. Why is this so? Perhaps because we are not machines built for raw data. We are beings of experience, emotion, connection. Story binds information to meaning. Music binds story to memory. Together, they form a chain strong enough to cross centuries. Think again of that firelit circle. The drumbeat is steady. Chant rises and falls. The listeners sway, caught in the rhythm. The story told may be of ancestors, of gods, of battles, of migrations. It may tell how the river was formed, or why the stars take their shape. Whatever it is, the listeners will remember not because they have studied, but because they have felt. The music has entered their bones. And so, music became not only entertainment, not only ritual, but the very backbone of culture. It was how a people remembered themselves. To lose a song was to lose a piece of identity. To silence the music was to silence history itself. This is why, even today, music is tied so deeply to heritage. A lullaby passed from parent to child carries not only melody, but ancestry. A folk song sung in a village contains echoes of centuries. A national anthem holds the pride, the struggles, the hopes of a people in just a few verses. Music continues to be memory and story long after we learn to write. And memory is not only collective, it is personal. We each carry within us a private soundtrack woven from the songs of our lives. A melody from childhood can return us, in an instant, to a kitchen filled with warmth. A song from adolescence can open the floodgates of longing or joy. A piece of music we once played at a funeral can bring tears decades later. It is as though music imprints itself not only on the mind, but on the heart, the body, the spirit. Neuroscience confirms this. Music activates more regions of the brain than almost any other activity. It binds sound, movement, memory, and emotion in a single act. It weaves us together from within. This is why those living with memory loss often respond to music when they respond to little else. A familiar song can awaken recognition, stirring the self that seemed lost. Music becomes a key, unlocking doors that words cannot open. Even when language fades, melody endures. In this sense, music is not only memory, it is memory's last refuge. But what does this tell us about being human? It tells us that we are not creatures of pure intellect, nor of mere survival. We are beings of story, beings of connection. Our memories are not just stored in lines of logic, but in rhythms of feeling. To remember is to relive, and music allows us to relive with intensity, with color, with depth. Consider how music continues to shape the way we tell stories today. Films without music feel hollow, their stories unfinished. Ceremonies without song feel incomplete. Even modern technology recordings, streaming, digital archives are only extensions of what was always true. Music is how humans remember who they are. It is humbling to realize that the songs of today are tomorrow's history. The lullabies we sing, the anthems we play, the songs we write, they will outlive us. They will carry fragments of our lives into the future, just as the bone flutes and chants of the past have carried theirs into ours. And so, music is not only memory, not only story, it is continuity. It is the thread that ties us to those who came before and those who will come after. When we sing, we join a chorus that stretches back tens of thousands of years. When we listen, we hear echoes not just of our own lives, but of humanity itself. Perhaps this is why music moves us so deeply. It is not only sound, it is belonging. It is recognition. It is the voice of memory itself, whispering, "You are not alone. You are part of something greater. You are part of a story still unfolding." And in this way, music has always been more than art. It has been a vessel of survival. For without memory, there is no culture. Without story, there is no identity. And without music, perhaps there would be no memory and no story strong enough to endure the long passage of time. So the next time you find yourself humming a tune, or moved by a song you thought you had forgotten, pause and remember. You are partaking in one of the oldest human acts. You are carrying memory forward, carrying story forward. You are, in that simple act, keeping humanity alive. There are moments in human life that feel larger than life itself. Birth, death, marriage, mourning, initiation, healing. These turning points are not only events, they are thresholds. And for as long as we can trace our history, music has stood at those thresholds, guiding us from one state of being to another. If music was memory in one sense and story in another, then in ritual, it became something greater still. A bridge between the seen and the unseen, the ordinary and the sacred. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a circle of people thousands of years ago. A fire burns at the center, its light trembling against stone walls. The air is thick with smoke, sweat, and anticipation. Then, the rhythm begins. The drum, steady as a heartbeat. The chant rises, layered with voices. Feet stamp the ground, hands clap in unison. The sound builds, grows, envelops. Time begins to blur. The participants sway, lose themselves in motion and sound. In this space, the boundaries between body and spirit dissolve. This is ritual. Music is its soul. Why? Because music changes us. It alters our breathing, our heartbeat, our state of mind. It pulls us into rhythm with others, creating unity where there was once separation. In ritual, music is not background, it is transformation itself. Anthropologists have long noted how nearly every culture uses music in its rites of passage. When a child is born, there is a song of welcome. When a person comes of age, there is a song of initiation. When lovers unite, there is a song of marriage. And when a life ends, there is a song of farewell. These are not random, they're essential. Music carries us through change, tells us, in sound, you are not alone in this moment. Others have walked this path. You walk it now with them. Consider the lullaby. To us, it may seem small, a parent humming to soothe a restless child. But in its essence, the lullaby is ritual. It marks the threshold between waking and sleeping, between fear and safety. The melody calms not only the infant's body, but the parents as well. It binds them together in trust. In that soft song, something sacred unfolds. Or consider mourning. Across cultures, the death of a loved one has always been accompanied by music, a dirge, a chant, a keening cry. These sounds are not merely expressions of grief, they are containers for it. They give the mourners a way to release what words cannot hold. And they remind the living that death is not the end of story, but part of a larger rhythm. Even in modern life, we still feel this. Imagine a funeral without music, no hymn, no song, no melody to hold the silence. It would feel incomplete, almost unbearable. Music is what helps us face the unfathomable. It is the sound of humanity searching for meaning. Ritual music also reaches toward the sacred. In temples and churches, in mosques and synagogues, in shrines and sacred groves, music lifts the human voice toward the divine. Chants, hymns, mantras, psalms all are ways of shaping sound into prayer. Music becomes the bridge, the offering, the medium through which we reach beyond ourselves. What is remarkable is how universal this is. From Gregorian chant to Sufi qawwali, from the haunting tones of Tibetan singing bowls to the soaring voices of gospel choirs, music carries the sacred in every tradition. Even in silence-based practices, such as Zen meditation, the absence of music creates its own kind of soundscape, the ringing stillness that frames the sacred moment. But why music? Why not words alone or silence alone? Perhaps because music mirrors the divine in its very nature. It is invisible, yet powerful. It cannot be held, yet it can transform. It is both fleeting and eternal. Music lives in the present moment, yet lingers in memory. In this way, it reflects the mystery of existence itself. To use music in ritual is to acknowledge that the sacred is not only beyond us, is within us, vibrating through our bodies as sound. And music does more than lift us upward, draws us together. Ritual is rarely a solitary act, it is communal. And nothing unites a community like music. When voices join, when hands clap, when feet move in rhythm, the many become one. For a time, individuality softens into belonging. The group breathes as a single organism. In this unity, people find strength, healing, and meaning. Modern science tells us why this happens. When we sing or chant together, our heartbeats can synchronize. Our brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. We feel safer, more connected, more whole. But our ancestors did not need neuroscience to know this. They felt it. They lived it. It built their rituals around it. Even today, you can sense it in the simplest of moments. At a concert, thousands sing the same refrain. At a wedding, when the first notes of a love song swell. At a memorial, when a single violin cuts through grief like light through shadow. In those moments, music reminds us that we are part of something larger. That the sacred is not only found in distant heavens, it is found right here, in the vibration of sound, in the rhythm of hearts, in the voices of others joined with our own. In this sense, music is one of humanity's oldest medicines. Long before doctors, long before hospitals, there were shamans, healers, and medicine women who used song as part of their craft. A chant could focus the mind, calm the fear, open the heart. A drum could steady the breath, carry the spirit into trance, or call it back again. The music itself was not just accompaniment, it was healing, it was prayer made audible. And perhaps that is the deepest truth of ritual music. It heals not only the body, not only the mind, but the soul. It aligns us with rhythm, with community, with the sacred order of life. It reminds us that we are participants in a mystery far greater than ourselves. So when you next hear ritual music, whether it is the chant of monks, the call to prayer, the ringing of bells, or the gentle hum of a parent rocking a child, pause and listen. You are hearing one of humanity's oldest expressions of reverence. You are witnessing sound woven into the fabric of the sacred. And as the notes fade, remember, you carry this capacity too. Every breath, every heartbeat, every voice raised in song is part of the ancient current of ritual that has shaped humanity since the beginning. To make music is to touch the sacred. To join in it is to remember that you are not only a body moving through time, but a soul moving through mystery. In this way, music is more than art, more than sound. It is ritual, it is prayer, it is the sacred heartbeat of humanity itself. Imagine for a moment that you are listening to your favorite song. Perhaps it is a piece of classical music, swelling with strings and crescendos. Or maybe it is something simpler, a guitar riff, a drum beat, a voice that moves you in ways you cannot explain. You feel it before you even think about it. Goosebumps rise on your arms, your heart skips. The memory surfaces unbidden, you're transported. What is happening here? How can a mere arrangement of sound waves air vibrating against the eardrum move us so profoundly? This is where science and wonder meet. The story of music in the brain is as astonishing as any myth. Let's begin with the basics. When sound enters the ear, it travels through the cochlea, a tiny spiral filled with fluid and microscopic hairs. These hairs move with the waves of sound, translating vibration into electrical signals. Those signals travel along the auditory nerve into the brain. At this point, sound is no longer vibration, it is information. But here's where it becomes extraordinary. Unlike other senses, which are processed in fairly specific regions of the brain, music lights up the mind like a constellation. It does not stay confined to one place, it spreads. The auditory cortex handles pitch and tone. The motor cortex engages with rhythm, preparing the body to move. The limbic system, the seat of emotion, floods with feeling. The hippocampus stirs memory. The prefrontal cortex reflects, evaluates, imagines. In short, when you hear music, your whole brain is listening. Few experiences activate the mind so fully. Music is not just heard, it is embodied, it is remembered, it is felt. Science has shown that even before we are born, our brains are tuned to music. In the womb, fetuses respond to rhythm. Newborns can recognize lullabies sung to them before birth. This suggests that music is not learned from culture alone, it is woven into our biology. But why? Why should a brain evolve to respond so deeply to something as intangible as music? Some scientists argue that music is a byproduct, a kind of evolutionary accident, an offshoot of language. Others believe the opposite, that music was central to our survival. That rhythm helped coordinate work, that song bonded communities, that melody carried emotion across the gaps where words failed. Neuroscience supports this second view. Music does not simply entertain us, it rewires us. Studies show that playing an instrument can strengthen neural pathways, improving memory, attention, and even empathy. Singing together releases oxytocin, a hormone of trust and connection. Listening to rhythm can synchronize brainwaves, pulling us into altered states of consciousness, states used in ritual, meditation, and healing for millennia. Then there is dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When a song builds toward its climax, dopamine floods the system, creating a rush of pleasure. But here's the fascinating part. The release often happens not at the moment of resolution, but just before it. The brain anticipates, predicts, leans forward into the music. It is as though music plays not only with sound, but with time itself, teaching us the art of expectation and release. Think of your favorite song. How many times have you listened to it? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Yet it still moves you. Why? Because music is not only repetition, it is renewal. Each listening is slightly different. Your brain, your mood, your memories shift with each encounter, and music adapts, weaving itself anew into the fabric of your experience. This is why music has such power over memory. A song from childhood can return you to a place, a scent, a feeling you thought forgotten. For those with Alzheimer's, music can unlock doors that words alone cannot. patients who no longer recognize their loved ones may still sing along to songs of their youth. In those moments, the music restores identity. It is as though the rhythm bypasses the broken pathways of memory and reaches something deeper, something primal and enduring. There is also a shadow side. Music can be used to manipulate. Marching songs can stir soldiers for war. Advertising jingles can plant ideas into our minds. National anthems can unify, but also divide. The brain does not always choose how music affects it. Sometimes, music chooses us. Yet at its heart, the science of music is not about control, it is about connection. Consider how rhythm synchronizes people. When we drum together, when we chant in unison, our brainwaves begin to align. This is not metaphor. EEG studies show that collective music making brings neural coherence, a literal harmony of minds. Perhaps this is why people describe feeling carried by a crowd at a concert, or lost in the collective voice of a choir. The science confirms what our ancestors already knew. Music makes us one, and it goes even deeper. Recent research suggests that music may help the brain heal itself. Stroke patients who cannot speak may relearn language through singing. Those with Parkinson's can regain movement through rhythm. The brain, it seems, has an intimate relationship with music. So intimate that melody and rhythm can awaken pathways otherwise locked away. What does this tell us about humanity? Perhaps that music is not decoration to life, it is foundation. It is the invisible architecture of our minds. It teaches us rhythm, memory, emotion, unity. It helps us heal, it helps us hope, and yet for all the science, mystery remains. Why does a minor key feel sad? Why do certain intervals give us chills? Why does silence within music sometimes feel louder than sound? These are questions that neuroscience continues to explore, but perhaps they are not meant to be fully solved. Perhaps part of music's power lies in its ability to transcend explanation, to reach the parts of us that science can measure but not define. So next time you listen to music, remember what is happening within you. Not just notes in the air, but neurons firing, hormones releasing, memories stirring, hearts synchronizing. You are not just hearing sound. You are participating in one of the most profound dialogues between body and spirit that evolution has ever shaped. Music is not outside of us. It is us. It is the brain dreaming aloud. It's the mind singing to itself. It is humanity turned into sound.